March Machines is soon upon us, and today we'll be going through my top 5 red cards from March Machines for Standard. So what are they? Well, let's get into it. Coming number 5, we have the Invasion of Tarkas. This is a siege, a 2-mana siege. When it enters the battlefield, you get to reveal any number of dragon cards from your hand. When you do, it deals X damage plus 2 to any other target, where X is the number of cards revealed this way. Okay, X can't be 0, and it comes in with 5 damage counters. So you get to reveal a bunch of dragons just to kill something. Okay, even if you just reveal 1 dragon, 2 mana to deal 3 damage to a creature is pretty decent. 2 dragons, that's 4 damage, and so on and so forth. So good cheap removal. You've got to have some dragons in your hand though, but still pretty decent. And then when it transforms, it turns into the Defiant Thundermaw. So it's a 4/4 flying trample. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, it deals 2 damage to any target. If you're playing a bunch of dragons, this is a really good card, right? Just having a 4-mana 4/4 flying trample is pretty decent, and you get to attack, and you get to start shooting stuff, and whether it be their face, whether it be other creatures, planeswalkers, whatever it may be. It is a cheap siege to get down. There's also removal. If you have a dragon-themed deck with decent dragons in Standard, then you can really excel with this Defiant Thundermaw. Coming number 4, we have the Big Dyno. We have Atali Primal Conqueror, and this is a big dinosaur. 7 mana though for a 7/7 trample, so lots of mana, but very powerful. So when it enters the battlefield, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. Then you may cast any number of spells from among non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. Crazy stuff. So you could end up having removal, creatures, planeswalkers, whatever it may be. Very cool. You are paying 7 mana, you get a big body, basically 2 free cards, right? So pretty decent. Then if you pay a massive 10 mana, okay, one of its friction green, you get to then transform it. And when it transforms, it turns into a big creature. 11/11 trample, indestructible. Be really hard to deal with in Standard. And when it deals combat damage to a player, that player gets that many poison counters. So you're either going to be dying from damage or poison. One of the two. This guy is come swinging in. Really big game-ending card. Very cool. But it is fun, right? It is such an awesome way to end the game. And I'm really looking forward to trying to find different ways I can get this guy out smash face. Because that's going to be all I'm going to be doing with this card. In number 3, we have Chandras Beacon. That's 6 mana, so quite pricey. 5 loyalty. Has a passive ability. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, you may copy it. Then you get to choose new targets for that copy. It can only trigger once each turn. Pretty good. That's pretty good. But you do need a lot of mana, right? You need to have this in play, and then you need to cast something. So you need to stick around for probably a turn. You can +2. You can add 2 mana at any color. You know, pretty good. So you could play this, plus it. You know, maybe cast something cheap, get 2 of. And -1, you get exile the top 5 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may cast an instant sorcery spell from among those exiled cards. Pretty good. Built-in card advantage right there. Then -X, Chandra deals X damage to each of up to 2 targets. You know, you do need quite a lot of loyalty. Quite a fun planeswalker, a little build around. I don't see it being that powerful. You know, being able to copy stuff, okay, it is 6 mana. You've got to get to 6 mana. Yes, it can then get more mana, but at that point, you already got a lot of mana. There are big red decks around with Koth and things like that. I just don't know where this is going to find a home. I'm sure it will in some form of, like, is it spell deck or something like that. You could play this. You know, has some built-in removal, but it is, you know, kind of forcing to use all of Chandra's loyalty to remove some good stuff. We'll have to wait and see if this planeswalker finds a home, but I do think it will. Depends where. Because I think wherever it does find a home, it will be good. But it needs to find something. That's why it's lower on this list. Going number 2, we have City on Fire. So it's 8 mana. You may be thinking, what? This is 8 mana. This is crazy. Its enchantment has Convoke. That's the key thing. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. So we've seen cards similar to this before, but this is really good. It has Convoke, okay? Let's say you're playing mono red. Mono red aggro. Let's say you have 4 mana out. 4 mountains out, have 4 creatures out. You could play this, and then you're really putting pressure on your opponent. Because that means your lightning strikes are dealing 9 damage. Your play on fire are dealing 6 damage. It means that even if you just hit them, you know, with a Monastery Swift Spear, that's being buffed by prowess. This is dealing an absolute ton of damage. It just massively amplifies everything in your deck. Wouldn't play too many copies, but I would play probably 2 copies, maybe even 3. In a mono red deck. Now, mono red is already pretty fine-tuned. You've seen things like Mechanized Warfare, which is pretty decent. That adds, you know, 1 to everything. But tripling your damage is incredibly strong. That is something not to ignore. And you got Convoke, which makes it very, very useful. There's so many times where I've played mono red, and you do have maybe 3, 4 small creatures out, and you can't really attack into your opponent. They may have some decent blockers or anything like that, and you're like, oh, okay, slam this down. Absolute powerhouse, absolute powerhouse. So yeah, this is a really, really good card. I think it will see play in mono red decks. You can see how many, but I think is very strong. Finally, coming number 1, we actually have a decent Urbrask for once. We have Urbrask coming in 4 mana for a 4/4 first strike. I think this is a really good build around card, right? So decent stats, 4/4 first strike for 4. Whenever you cast instant sorcery spell, Urbrask deals 1 damage to target opponent. Okay, and then you get to add a red mana. You kind of get a refund on your stuff, right? Say you play a lightning strike or anything like that. That's the 4 damage if you go face, and you get a refund on red. That's pretty good. I think this is a really good top end. You could play this in an aggro deck, but you could also play this in a spells type strategy, similar with Chandra. This is actually pretty cool. And then you get to pay 1 red, and then you get to flip it. But you can only do that if you've cast 3 or more instant spells this turn. So it's going to cost a lot. You know, you've got to play a lot of cheap stuff. Maybe, you know, things like Consider and things like that to try and, you know, get through, you know, your hand and your deck as quick as possible. But then you have the Great Work. So the Great Work, when you go into this, it deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. So you got basically a board sweeper. Very, very cool. Then second one is you get 3 treasure tokens. Fantastic. We like ramping, allows us to cast some more spells, right? And then until the end of turn, you may cast instant sorcery spells from your graveyard. If a spell casts into a graveyard, exile instead, then transform it back into Urbrask. So all of those spells that you've just cast, be able to transform your Urbrask, 3 turns later, you get to cast them all back again. Incredible. Very, very strong. This is a build around card for sure. It is a really cool build around card. So finally we have a good Urbrask, very different to the other Urbrasks that we've seen in the past. And I do feel this has a good home, even just as a 4 mana 4/4 first strike. It is very good. You get to flip it, even better. So this is a really cool card, which I'm excited to build some really cool decks around. There you have it, guys. Those are my top 5 red cards from March of the Machines for Standard. What are your picks? Let me know down in the comments, guys. Urbrask is really cool. Really, really cool. Nice to see a good Urbrask. Good build around card. Chandra could go with it. You can build a nice cool deck around it. City on Fire, though, could make red decks really powerful. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. But if you want to see my top 5 black cards from March of the Machine Standard, then make sure to click on this video right here. And if you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That is it from me, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.